And when you meet somebody in work, you speak politely to them the first time, and maybe for years before you start speaking more casually. And meanwhile, what you think of the other person might be something totally different, but built into the language, it's a very polite system. And I find that just, it's kashi, it's very beautiful when people speak, really oshari no Nihongo. I really like it.
Oh, okay. Any other question about manners?
Anybody?
Okay. One of the most difficult things for me is like a lot of Americans feel like the sense of entitlement, but like I feel like NBO explaining that to people, like being mindful of taking.
Great point you bring up. Here's the two differences, the main differences in Japan. And this is a generalization. Not every single person, but this is a generalization. In Japan, the overall mindset is to not create trouble for other people and keep the peace, wa momoru kind of thing. Always consider the other person first. In America, it's me. How do I stand out? And how do I do the best? And how do I... neither of these are bad things. And the me mentality is fantastic for people who rise above a lot of hardships to create fantastic things. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. In Japan, it's sort of frowned upon to nani sono kugi o utsu yatsu no kotowaza. Yeah, so like in Japan, the nail that stands up gets hit. So in America, we're brought up, you are number one, you can do anything. In Japan, it's a group mentality. Both of these are fantastic. Trying to do the one that you're not is not so good. But the great thing about what resonates with me about the Japan mentality is when you are with a group of people who are really good at what they do and you succeed, you're celebrating with a group of people, and that group celebration is just so much more enjoyable than, I made it to the top, me, I did it, I fucking love it. That's great, but like, it's kind of lonesome when you're celebrating something you did only by yourself. And I find that if there's someone that I can share that success with, that's a very kind of Japanese team mentality that I really enjoy. But on the other hand, had I not grown up in America and realized that if I'm working with someone who's holding me back, I don't want to be in this group. I want to be above this group. I want to do other things. That would have been frowned upon a bit in Japan, and it wouldn't have been able to be nurtured. So it's been beneficial to have both parts of those cultures in me, and neither of them are bad. They're both icho-itan. Icho-itan is what? Pluses and minuses.
I totally agree with you. It's important in this age of like a digital news and fake news and everything. It's important to have multiple perspectives on approaching things and people, because you just cannot really kind of believe in one source of information, and you need to have different perspectives. That's always what I'm always kind of telling the kids who are learning Japanese or Japanese culture at school. So I totally agree with you.
True point. And growing up in Japan, see, I'm lucky because I moved to Japan as an adult. I think I would have been dead if I was a kid there. Because Japanese school is a whole new level of, this is the real thing. I mean, what is it, 6 days a week? And they actually clean up after themselves. And it's very difficult work and very hard work. And then, how many letters do we have? 26? And kanji is what? 5,000 basic ones or something like that. It's a whole different world. You come in there, especially for me, I came already like having some sort of a resume. So that it was like a boost to some extent. But the kids in Japan, they really work to have people talk about people having scholastic abilities. I don't know if it's abilities, it's the amount of hard work. I remember school was like a breeze. I just barely even worked and I passed. So I skipped most of the time. I played my guitar. And I think that would be very, very much frowned upon in Japan. And another thing I noticed about Japan, in America, it was only like kind of loser type of guys who played music. Long-haired, kind of outcasts. In Japan, you got guys who are on the sports team, you got baseball players, you got good-looking guys playing music and going to school.
I'm a musician myself.
You see what I'm saying? In America, it's like kind of like the scholastic type, and then there's the Kurt Cobain type. You know, they don't cross, but if you go to Japan, it's like you meet some of these musicians, and they really went to school, and they didn't have that rock and roll spirit that we have, like just cutting out school and throwing paper airplanes and stuff. And it doesn't sound like much fun, though, does it?
Exactly. I always do that, even here.
Even here?
Yeah. So.
But I noticed that. Let's look.
Have you noticed how all the high school bands in Japan?
What's that?
How all the high school bands in Japan are mostly girls,
A lot of girls, yeah.
which is not the case here. The high school band here in the US, it's mostly guys.
Great point.
In Japan, it's mostly girls.
I think the stimulus to play music here, at least for me, was completely to get chicks. 100%. And when I explain that to people in Japan, they don't get it. You know why? Because already these guys had chicks. They were already like doing good in school, looking good, and sporty types, and so like it's a different climate. It's a different climate.
Do you know their latest sort of most favorite instruments for the girls?
Guitar,
Drums.
drums.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. I love seeing females play music over there. Over here, it's not nearly as common as it is in Japan.
Right.
Let's add, because time is short, let's get to the questions they have.
Okay.
Do Japanese parents encourage their children to have a career in music?
Good question. I would assume that you probably answer better than I would, but I don't really know of a lot of people who really hope their kids go into the music business in any country. So I would probably say it's the same as America.
Speaking of different cultures, like here in America and in Japan, when you were working with musicians, music being a more universal language, was it difficult for you to initially get certain thoughts out when you were writing songs or working with, Japanese musicians or trying to coordinate an album or something in those means?
Working with Japanese musicians became a very natural thing right from the start. As soon as I moved to Japan, luckily, I joined the band of one of my favorite singers, Aikawa Nanase. She was one of the J-pop singers who got me interested in the whole genre. And to join her band and work with her and write with her and record with her, I was very lucky, and it just came natural. And doing that really just got my Japanese language turbocharged. Very natural. But the musical process is different than America. Musical process is completely different. Each song has a concept, a goal, a team. This song is about this, it's going to be this long, it's going to be for this particular event or this particular anime or whatever. So it's a very goal-oriented. It's not like you're noodling around and I came up with a song. Both ways are good. Both ways are good.
All right.
A while ago, this is kind of not related, but a while ago you did a comment on the Gazette and how they have the phrasing and everything.
Yeah.
It was kind of part of what he said, how the music industry in Japan, sometimes the parents don't quite agree with it. I wanted to know your experience with, working with a lot of people. Have you met anybody that has the same issue that Ricky had with his father?
Met anybody who has what?
That Ricky had with his father, how his dad...
Oh, the singer of the Gazette?
Yeah,
I'm not that familiar with his family. I love it when guys know more about Japan stuff than I do.
I work with that's why.
In Japan?
Yes, I work with you, man.
How cool is that? Yeah, I don't... Japanese stuff is very private about private matters. If you're in the actual circle, then you might know what's going on with that particular band or artist, but it's kind of, I guess it's different here in Japan. I don't really know a lot about the personal lives of the artists unless I'm working with them. Very, very good point.
Sure. What's the difference in crowd etiquette? Like, if you're playing a gig, like, at the Viper Room versus, like, a space like that in Tokyo, what's the differences?
No cell phones. No cell phones. Again, with that worrying about making problems for other people. they don't allow them, and occasionally I was just at a classical concert, and they were, after the concert was over, it was like a curtain call, and they said, all right, if you want to take a picture, take it now. So everybody busted out their telephones and took a photo. But no, there's no cell phones, and people tend to listen during the songs and applaud before and after, and which is kind of unnerving because when you're playing, there's no noise. You've got to be perfect. If you do something wrong, they notice. In America, they're just going off the whole time. That's why we record on our live album in Mexico City. In Japan, it's like, no, you can't do it.
They even listen to the final, sound of the still ringing,
At first, when I first went over there, it was very unnerving. And before a show, when you're standing backstage getting ready to go on the show, it's dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. It's like, is anybody out there? Is anybody out there? I can't believe it. But then you get out there and it's totally full and they're silent. They're holding back, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Sure.
Yes.
I'm Shiva Priest, and I have a question about the spiritual aspect. You've been living in Japan 15 years. So how do you see the influences of Japanese people, the spiritual aspect, Shinto and Buddhism? The Shinto, we accept other culture, other spiritual beliefs. It's kind of like the music scene, I guess, is adapt that mentality. So how do you see the different spiritual?
Great question. I'm unqualified to answer it, but I'll give you my take on it. I find that spirituality in Japan is a lot more low-key than it might be in America. I haven't found any position where I've been uncomfortable because of someone has a particular spiritual belief or a spiritual manner or anything like that. I've never had someone try to convert me into any kind of spiritual thing. I just find the whole topic of religion in general very, very low key and very private, and that works for me. It doesn't seem to be a major topic in, at least in my circles. I'm kind of ongaku gyokai, terebi gyokai. I'm sure in the Anmoku no Ryokai, in the background, that stuff is a big thing, but maybe I'm not completely privy to that information because I'm a foreigner. But I find it a very pleasant, as far as spirituality goes, I could be wrong, but I don't feel prejudice between the religions exists as much as some other countries.
Yes, spiritual. I think spiritual is a good word to describe Japanese psyche. They're not really necessarily.
I mean, a lot of people
religious per se. Right?
don't seem to even know what religion they are. And you might talk about what religion. I don't know. I think my mom was this, and it's just not a be-all, end-all type of thing, in my opinion.
Okay, one final question.
I think a lot of people, if we can stretch it a little bit more for people who haven't asked questions.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've been talking too much, so.
Go ahead.
A non-musical question, but now that you've been living in Japan for a while, there's certain layers. Once you get to know people, get acquainted, your inner circle, do you still find that you're excluded maybe from some things because you're a foreigner, or have you been really adopted and accepted in? Super
question. I hope I answer this nicely in case anybody else watches this video. I think a lot of foreigners are concerned about being accepted when they move to another country, or even when they visit another country. They are concerned about belonging within that other country. And what I think I have to say to those people is belonging and being accepted shouldn't be all that important. It shouldn't definitely not be the be-all, end-all. It shouldn't be, especially when you're talking about people who look totally different. The world is never, ever, ever going to be an equal place where all people are the same and everybody is in harmony. It's never going to happen. And that's the way it should be. Vive la différence. All the differences are what's interesting. If everybody was the same, you wouldn't have any interest in going in Japan in the first place, or any country for that matter. So, to your question, belonging, sometimes you feel like you belong there. Sometimes, even though you're in a circle of people that you like and you love working with, you're the go-to gaijin. And that's fine. If people want to know about what the people in America think about this situation right there, I can tell them that. You know, so you'll have a special part, a special existence in whatever group of people you're around. But I think a lot of foreigners might get discouraged going to any country thinking, well, they didn't accept me and I speak their language perfect, but I don't belong, I don't feel like I belong. I think belonging is the wrong goal. Being there and doing something that you love doing and being with people that you love doing it with, that's great. But you've got to, 統一民族って何ですか? 統一民族 homogeneous, indigenous, what's the word? It's all one race society. Unlike America, where we're used to seeing all kinds of different things living together. In Japan, there's like, what is it, 3% foreigners over there, something like
No,
that?
more,
More?
in Tokyo, 10%. It's now kind of
But here in America, you're definitely the person who lives next to you has a different heritage.
right.
So it's completely different. And
But what you're saying is probably, something that maybe Japanese high school students want to hear about, because it's not only just your kind of visible difference, but also the deep, sense of belonging is what everybody's actually kind of, craving.
good point.
Yeah.
This belonging should not necessarily be with a country or a city. The belonging should be the people that you surround yourself with. And belonging also entails your sonzaikan te nani? Your spot, your existence. So like, for example, if you're in a band and you're the guitar player is your position in that band. You're not the advisor, you're not the keyboard player. You're the guitar player and you love being the guitar player. So if you go to Australia, you're never going to have that accent. And that's great. You don't have to be something that you're not to be fulfilled yourself. So as soon as belonging and being accepted, and you will belong and you will be accepted to a certain extent, but it's never going to be this kind of thing that people put too much emphasis on. So this is very important to me, because even though I'm very happy and content in Japan, of course there's moments when people who don't know me, they'll just look at me and like, oh, he's that foreigner. It's very, very not often, but for example, I'll get into a taxi, and the first thing the driver might say is, sorry, no English. And then I say, Takibashi Dori, I'll say it's where I'm going, and I'll start speaking in Japanese, and he'll go, ah. But like, a lot of Japanese people, it's just a lot of trouble to even try, and particularly older people. But this is like slimming down, and the majority of people enjoy the challenge of working with people of other countries because it's a thrill, it's new. But in belonging, it's overrated. It's overrated. Who would want to be part of a club that would allow you to be in that club in the first place?
You lived and worked in Japan for how many years?
15 years.
15 years.
なのにこの日本語。
Other than your interest in the musical scene there, what are some of the other things about Japan that resonate with you?
The food, the basic day-to-day peacefulness. Even though it's a city, it's like New York on steroids. The safety. I am never once concerned about safety. I've been everywhere in the world. I think it's the most safe country. And I live right downtown. I live like practically in Kabukicho, which is the nightlife district. And I live there. If I wake up at 4 in the morning and I want to get something to eat, I can just walk outside, no problem. One time I left my wallet in a supermarket, went back the next day, they held it for me. I'm never concerned about safety or who's behind me or anything like that. Of course, you can do dangerous things any country if you don't have common sense and don't go places you shouldn't. But basically, on the whole, you never have to be concerned about safety. And once you get used to that, that is just, oh my God. And I don't know how they do it. Maybe, a politically minded person could answer that better than I could. But that safety is, I just love it so much for someone who lives downtown in the city.
Because we respect their things, the person, the wallet, the person's keys, vector behind the wallet, because we respect everything.
I like that.
Yeah,
like
I
that.
can keep your wallet. For safety, yes.
I'm sorry? Different etiquette? Oh, different etiquette in serving food. I'm sure there are people in the food serving industry have certain tricks and things that they do to make it graceful when they serve it. But the biggest difference is the way food looks. It's important to have not only a balance of vegetables to starch to meat, not only that balance, but the color balances. And they're very concerned with the presentation of the meal, which growing up in America, I never thought once about. I just want to eat it. But in Japan, that's why people take so many pictures of food in Japan. Because, not only because it's good looking, but somebody took the effort to arrange this piece of food, especially like some bento boxes, are just so beautiful that you got to take a picture, at least out of respect to the person who did the work to make it. And it's meant to be eaten, I mean, you're just going to eat it. But I think the main difference is the way food looks is equally important to the taste and the health benefits of food, right?
Well, that's a nice segue into my final serious question to you. Do you enjoy natto?
Natto. If you're a gaijin, they're going to ask you this. It's not my favorite thing.
Natto is fermented beans.
Yeah, it's not my favorite thing. It's got a very strong smell.
Well, Marty.
Go-to gaijin question.
All right.
We're not going to end on that question.
I thought it was really appropriate. Go ahead.
So you're planning on living in Japan for long term? You think that's someplace you're going to
Ideally,
about coming back to America?
Ideally, I would love to live in both places. But I'm on tour so much that it's really hard to even it out. So I try to be in America as much as I can. But I'm based in Japan. It's a toughie, because family's here.
Can you own a house there?
What's that? In Japan, I live in an apartment.
But are you allowed as a foreigner to own a house?
Sure.
I'm sure, yeah. Sure. Any last questions that I really have missed?
I travel a lot for work, and I see, like, especially the last 4 or 5 years, English is so pervasive. Fluency in English is so pervasive around the world, and I see sadly, like an erosion of regional cultures. What's special about Japan that allows it to kind of maintain?
Super question.
Because it simultaneously absorbs and welcomes a lot of global culture, but maintains its own.
Super question, and I can only answer this in my own opinion. So, there's a cliche stereotypes about how Japanese people copy things and make them better. Well, this stereotype is like it's real. It's totally real, and there's no shame in it. As a matter of fact, everyone could learn from that. Because all the good things, they're already out there. We have everything we need. Now, to make more business, we need to create things that people want, new, better things, better versions of what we have. And Japan has such a knack for that, and I don't really know where that came from, survival skills or whatever, but they have an innate interest in other countries. And if they find something interesting about another country, they'll analyze that and bring it back. Whether it be Western instruments, like when they first discovered the electric guitar, which I don't know where that was invented, but the Japanese found it in like the 60s, and they just went hog wild with that thing. And like everybody was listening to the Ventures and buying guitars, and they loved it. And then now the best guitars are in Japan, and Japan collected all the best guitars in the world, and they're great hobbyists. If you're a hobbyist about anything, electric trains, there's some little shop in Japan that has the rarest trains in the world. If you're a hobbyist of Italian cooking utensils, there's the guy who's got the first pizza slicer ever. It's in Japan. People really go into details about things that interest them in Japan. And therefore, that curiosity in other countries has benefited Japan. I think they're very curious. I think there's so many TV shows about foreigners and their opinions. They're so interested in foreigners' opinions of their country. I really pretty much turn down these kind of TV shows. I still do some of them, but they're always, we want to know what they think about Japan. They want to know what foreigners think of Japan. And that curiosity is, I'm very flattered. Because when I was in America, living in America, I didn't really care what people from France thought of my country. I didn't care what Australian people thought. I was just living. But in Japan, oh, do Americans like sushi? Or they care about these little things. And I think that curiosity is very good for culture all over. I sound like an idiot. I sound like that that girl who's the Miss America pageant person.
No, we're actually doing for world peace, you know. So out of curiosity, my final question to you is that would you be able to come back for the future dialogue like this?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, this is, I'm so flattered that you guys even care. You know, if any of you guys are slightly interested in going to Japan, it's worth it at any level. Just go to Japan and experience it. You know, living there is a completely different animal than visiting there. I think both of them are extremely valuable experiences. Go there, visit there first, and it will change your life. Going to Japan will give you ideas you never thought you had, and everything that you know about Japan is just magnified. And even my bad explanations of stuff is going to make more sense, and at least you won't forget it. And it's just such a cool place. And thank you so much for coming, and I really appreciate it. You guys are just fantastic, great questions. I really appreciate it. I gotta go. Thank you so much.